This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News. I'm Sophie Ikenye. Our top stories. As life returns to normality in Comoros, we speak to the country's former foreign minister about the latest unrest. Challenging the boss, Malawi's Vice President Saulos Chilima sits down with the BBC's Hard Talk to discuss his run for the top job.
I would like to exercise my constitutional right and contest for the office of the president.
Also in the program, how far are you willing to go to get your mobile phone connected? Some Ghanaians have taken efforts to new heights, up a tree to be exact.
This tree means a lot to us. The whole village depends on it because it's the only spot we can get access to mobile network signals.
And in sports, Gambia's Football Federation writes a formal complaint to the Confederation of African Football over the eligibility of Togo's Adewale Olufade. Thanks for joining us on Focus on Africa from BBC World News. We start in the island nation of Comoros, where this week has seen more unrest between anti-government protesters and security forces. Residents told news agency AFP there had been heavy gunfire and clashes right up until Thursday evening. Now, authorities also reportedly cut off water and power supplies. Today, things have been calmer after an accord was signed by the different sides aimed at ending the violence, but locals remain angry at constitutional changes which would end the rotation of the presidency between the country's three main islands after one term. It's a move which would disadvantage the island of Anjuan, which residents say has become the epicenter of the fighting. An official at the airport there told the AFP that a significant contingent of security forces arrived on the island this week, leading locals to flee. Well, French expatriate Anaïs Groussard told the AFP that there were big explosions late on Wednesday and a lot of shooting in the early hours of Thursday. Let's cross over to Paris now and speak to the former foreign minister of Comoros, Salim Hamidi. Thanks for taking time to talk to us. We understand an accord has been signed by authorities, local authorities in Anjuan and the government. Has this made any change whatsoever from what you've heard?
Well, from what I know of the turmoil, I think this could be a step in the right direction. But it doesn't mean that a lasting solution has been found, since the current president, Azali, is adamant in maintaining his power through what he calls a referendum that he had organized about 3 months ago. This referendum was the source of all the problems, because the system as it prevailed until 3 months ago was that the constitutional dispensation provided for a rotative presidency for each of the island, with the president serving just one term.
Let me come in here. Let me come in here because I'm wondering what you think might have been the thinking behind this move by the president to extend the term limits.
Well, what everybody thinks is that the president, who came to power about 15 years ago through a military putsch, because he was from a military background. Now that he has come back again into the helm, he may have the intentions of clinging to power for more than would be tolerated, and it's a suspicion that the partners, his political partners in this game, that has made most of the opposition and most of the public opinion be opposed to the referendum itself, I mean, the very idea of holding a referendum to reform the institution was highly opposed. And during the day of the referendum, there were a lot of clashes, and some people were very hurt, and even a soldier had his hand cut off.
All right, we have to leave it there, Salim Hamidi, but of course we'll be keeping an eye on that situation there in the Comoros. Thank you for taking time to talk to us. Thank you. To Malawi now, where a battle is brewing over the presidency. The country's current vice president, Saulu Chilima, has announced plans to challenge for the top job in next year's elections. He will take on President Peter Mutharika after leaving the ruling party in June. Hard Talks' Zainab Badawi spoke to him about his ambitions.
I would like to exercise my constitutional right and contest for the office of the president.
So you want to exercise your constitutional rights. Are you also exercising and discharging your duties right now as vice president?
Well, the vice president's office is a delegated office constitutionally. So as I sit here and when I get back home, I still go to the office, report for duties. And because there is office of the vice president that needs to be run by a team of supporting technocrats and headed by an individual, I am still in that office.
So do you have meetings with President Mutharika?
Not after June. Not
since June, which is when you left the ruling DPP party?
Absolutely.
Do you meet any of the cabinet ministers?
Not officially, except when we attend functions together sometimes. It could be cultural events or church functions. And when you meet, you say hello because we worked together before.
But you're still drawing your salary as vice president, even though clearly you're not discharging your duties?
Well, I am, but like I said...
You said you haven't met the president since June.
No, I haven't met him, not at all. I mean, but what I'm saying is, the office is there. The office has not been vacated. I am still in that office, and therefore I'm available.
The Malawi Economic Justice Network says 30% of public resources get sucked up by corruption.
But what is the issue is, are we really seriously fighting corruption? That's the question we should be addressing. And that's where we're coming from. We're saying we don't agree that the fight is at the level that it should be. Because I don't want to go and start making allegations against people here, but we do know that there is cases of corruption back home that are not being pursued because the people are protected, they're in government. They belong to the ruling party.
WHO would like to see the end of people smoking, the World Health Organization. It's a cash crop, it's not a food crop, and there's a lot of food insecurity. Plus, there's a lot of child labour. 38% of children between 5 and 17 work somewhere in the Malawian economy, and a lot of them on tobacco farms. They get nicotine poisoning, handing the tobacco leaves. Terrible. So what's your policy on tobacco then? Do away with it in agriculture?
No.
Build it up?
I think you can't just say we'll do away with it. We are mindful of the anti-smoking lobby and the dangers associated with tobacco in terms of the nicotine, etc. And we are also aware that we need to diversify away from tobacco, and that is being done. I think, including the tobacco companies,
do more of that, will you?
We will have to do a lot more of that, but you can't wish away that industry because it has got an impact on other sectors.
Now, the full Hard Talk interview with Malawian Vice President Saulu Chilima can be seen on Monday, the 22nd of October here on BBC World News. Well, let's now take a quick look at other stories making the headlines across Africa. Zimbabwe's Constitutional Court has quashed a law which prohibited demonstrations which did not have permission from police. The judges said the Public Order and Security Act had been open to abuse by the state, and they hope the judgment will now allow peaceful assembly with police respecting the decision. In Cameroon, the Constitutional Council has rejected the last of 18 petitions calling for a rerun of the presidential election. Opposition leaders wanted a repeat of the October 7th vote, which was marred by violence in the Anglophone regions. Now, the result of the election is expected to be announced on Monday morning. Tunisia's Free Patriotic Union Party has merged with the ruling party Nida Tunis. The surprise union comes amidst the ruling party's splintering over the past 2 years, as well as increased political wrangling between the country's largest political parties. Algerian authorities have banned civil servants from wearing niqabs, that's the full-face veils, at work. Officials say it's to prevent identity issues. Most Algerian women don't wear the face veil, but the decision is still likely to face criticism by conservative minorities. Now, mobile phone signal is crucial if you want to keep in touch with friends and family in any part of the world. But there's a village in Ghana where accessing a network can be a challenge. Now, residents of a community in the north of the country have adopted an unusual technique to keep in touch with the outside world. The BBC's Thomas Nardi found out more.
This is no ordinary tree. In fact, it's rather special. It's the center of this community in many ways and one of its main links to the outside world.
This tree means a lot to us. The whole village depends on it because it's the only spot we can get access to mobile network signals to make and receive calls. So we take proper care of the tree. If this tree should fall, this village is doomed.
We cannot make phone calls in this village. We don't know why the calls frequently drop. That's the biggest problems for the ladies here as well. This is the only spot we can make and receive calls.
This is Belesenya, a village in northern Ghana. The majority of the residents have mobile phones, but using them have always been a challenge. This tree has become their lifeline. It is 3 p.m. local time, and that's the perfect time for getting strong network signals around the tree. Hello. Abubakar Al-Hassan lives in this village.
Getting access to mobile phone network signals is a big problem. All the people around here are searching for a signal. At times, if you want to reach a friend or a loved one, it's extremely difficult. The sad aspect of it is when a pregnant woman develops complications, or if someone is seriously sick, it can be very frustrating to get through to an ambulance.
I'm just about 10 meters away from the tree, and then there's no signal on my mobile phone. So I'll try and get closer and then see what happens. Okay, I'm beginning to get signals, and then the closer I get, the stronger it becomes. Tony Hassan is a telecommunications engineer.
This tree is typically acting as a reflector, and as its branches take signal, it reflects in the space, creating a zone of some dense signal to be able to communicate with, right? It is pretty much the same way that happens in your house, in your rooms. Sometimes you have to stand in a particular corner to be able to receive a mobile signal. And it's because you are far from the cell site, and so the signal that comes in would have to reflect at a certain angle, and then when you find that angle, you are able to make your communication from there.
The government has given indications it hopes to expand network coverage across Ghana. Until then, residents like Abubakar Al-Hassan will have to keep relying on the branches of this tree to keep in touch with the outside world. Thomas Nari, BBC News, Belesenya in northern Ghana.
The amazing tree there. Now, this is Focus on Africa from BBC World News. Still to come in sports, Guinea midfielder Naby Keita is ruled out of this weekend's Premier League tie between Liverpool and Huddersfield after picking up an injury in an Africa Cup of Nations qualifier. I'm Sophie Ikenye, and you're watching Focus on Africa from BBC World News. The top story on this program: life is returning to normal in Comoros today after 5 days of violent clashes between anti-government protesters and security forces. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, delayed elections have contributed to an economic slowdown and a tense climate. Now, the long-awaited presidential vote is just over 2 months away, and as preparations continue, activists both in the country and in the diaspora have raised concerns over keeping the election fair and transparent. 2 opposition radio stations were closed down earlier this week. So let's bring in Floribert Anzuluni, who is an activist and a member of the pro-democracy Filimbi movement. Thanks for taking time to talk to us on the program. So the vote is scheduled for December. President Kabila says he will not run again. Surely this is a good thing, isn't it?
This is a step, because the situation is still very alarming and sad. Even if Mr. Kabila is not standing up for the 3rd mandate, but the main problem remains. Mr. Kabila doesn't want to stop the power, to leave the power, and now he's using a new strategy in just manipulating the electoral process, even in killing it, because he would like to impose his candidate.
What do you mean by that? How do you know that he's doing that?
Yeah, we have I can just give you some examples. First of all, the voter files. We have around 10 million of people without fingerprints. Secondly, the political space is closed. We have, as Filimbi, 4 members arrested because we are part of non-violent demonstrations. 2 of the main opposition candidates were excluded of the process, and the Electoral Commission would like to use a kind of voting machine that has been never used anywhere else. So we have a lot of problems that will never bring the stability.
Those are very serious claims. You're talking about fingerprints missing.
Yeah.
You're talking about the opposition, which we all know some of them were banned from running as candidates. But it doesn't look that they are complaining much. It looks like they haven't said we will not run for this election, have they?
They are complaining. They are complaining. They are saying that they will not run if the situation does not change. So they're actually mobilizing. We all are actually mobilizing the population, because we need to impose to have good election, because the problem is not the election. We don't just need an election. We need to bring back the stability. And if we need to bring back the stability, we need to work on the legitimacy of the institutions. All the institutions are not legitimate as of today, and even illegal. So if we need to bring back stability, we need to legitimate the institutions, and we need to have fair and free elections, which is not the case right now.
But, okay, the election, the election date has been set.
Yeah.
Is the opposition going to take part if things don't change at all?
As of today, they're saying that they will take part, but they are giving some conditions that I just talked about. So if the voters' machines and other points that I've just raised are not resolved, we are going to mobilize the population. October 26 will be the first one, I think, the first demonstration that the opposition and the civil society will do.
Okay, so there are some people who have been arguing that the fragmented opposition really has no chance of taking the presidency. Why is it that they can't unite?
No, they need to be united. They have a very important responsibility in what will happen in the DRC. So we are pushing them to be united. And since a few weeks, they're working on the unification of the opposition. Next week, they have a meeting, I think, in South Africa to find a global and common strategy regarding the actual process.
Floribert, who are you speaking on behalf of? Because your group, the Filimbi, have also been accused of plotting a coup, so to speak, and some of your members have been arrested. Who are you speaking on behalf of?
I'm a citizen, and I'm speaking as a citizen. You know, the Constitution and the law are allowing me to speak as a citizen. I'm speaking on the name of the population, on my name as citizen. But yes, the movement actually is facing a lot of trouble from the government. We have 4 people arrested. They were accused of being part of a coup d'etat and others, so it's not easy, but we are working.
All right, Floribert Anzulini, we have to leave it there, but thank you for taking time to talk to us on the program.
Thank you too for inviting me.
You're watching BBC Focus on Africa. It's time now for some sport. Peter.
Many thanks, Sophie. And the Gambia Football Federation has written a formal complaint to the Confederation of African Football over the eligibility of Togo's Adewale Olufade. Olufade, whose name is also James Olufade, played for Togo as they drew 1-1 with the Gambia in an African Cup of Nations qualifier on the 12th of October. He was also on the team sheet for Tuesday's return match, which Togo won 1-0. but did not take part in the game. But the GFF claims the player is Nigerian and does not meet the necessary criteria to play for Togo. Meanwhile, the Malagasy team, which on Tuesday qualified for their first ever Africa Cup of Nations, has been rewarded by the government. The players will share about $28,000 each, while each was given a national award. Madagascar, ranked 106th in the world, belied their status as a minor football nation with a shock 2-2 draw with 2018 World Cup finalists Senegal and back-to-back wins over Equatorial Guinea to become the 40th different nation to qualify for the Nations Cup finals. Here in England, the Premier League returns this weekend after the international break. Liverpool are currently third on the table, but with the same points tally as the top two, Manchester City and Chelsea. Both Sadio Mane and Mo Salah are fit to play in the Reds match against Huddersfield on Saturday. That's despite suffering injuries while away for Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers. But Guinea's Naby Keita has not passed a fitness test. He went off at halftime during Guinea's 1-1 draw with Rwanda. That game was played on an artificial pitch, but his club manager has refused to blame the playing surface.
So do I think it's fair to play the same game on different surface? I say yes, it's okay. Rain, snow, whatever is absolutely okay. We are used to that. Artificial pitch is not a surface for football. So that's how it is. So yes, but I don't think that the injury had anything to do with that, to be honest. So I didn't even see it in that situation. I only saw the situation when he went off, but I didn't look at the grass in that moment. But in general, not only with African teams or whatever, each thing what we can do to make sure that everybody gets the right treatment immediately, and more when he needs it, yeah, I think we should.
Meanwhile, under fire Manchester United manager Jose Mourinho takes his side to Chelsea on Saturday. Remember, he won 3 league titles with the Blues in 2 spells, but Mourinho says he won't celebrate like crazy if his current team score a goal and get a victory. And I can tell you that a lot of eyes are going to be on that game this Saturday. Sophie, will you be watching?
I might just be watching, Peter.
That's just sports.
Thanks for the sport, Peter. Thank you. Let's turn to Kenya now, where a social media campaign has been launched to have a police officer honored by the state. Take a look at this. Now, this armed police constable, Josh Ombati, subduing and arresting 2 suspected robbers without killing them, contrary to what sometimes happens when state security confront violent thieves. There's an angry crowd urging Mr. Ombati to shoot the 2 suspects, but he stays calm and pleads with the mob to let him do his work. Now, many Kenyans are urging President Uhuru Kenyatta to recognize his efforts during tomorrow's Heroes Day. Thousands of genetically modified mosquitoes are to be released in a village in Burkina Faso in West Africa. It's part of a groundbreaking project that's aimed at wiping out the malaria-carrying insects. The release will take place when the weather conditions are right. Wahiga Mwaura reports.
This village is making history. Thousands of genetically modified mosquitoes will be released here as part of a project aimed at wiping out the malaria-carrying insects.
The benefits that this technology can have in terms of human lives is massive. We are approaching one of the biggest milestones so far of the project, which is the first release of genetically modified mosquitoes in Africa.
These insects won't stop malaria, but they will help teams prepare for a later release of insects engineered to spread infertility.
We are using a technology which is called a gene drive, which will allow us to spread a genetic modification through a whole mosquito population in order to reduce malaria transmission.
Scientists previously released and tracked marked mosquitoes so that they could learn more about their movements and habits. Malaria killed about 445,000 people around the world in 2016. But some people worry about the impact of genetically modified insects in the wild.
We will release mosquitoes only when we are confident the technology is not only effective but also safe.
Wahiga Mwaura, BBC News.
Well, before we go, a quick look at the top story today on Focus on Africa. Normality has started to return in Comoros after 5 days of violent clashes between anti-government protesters and security forces. Residents told the AFP news agencies that there had been heavy gunfire and clashes right up until Thursday evening. That's all from the program. From me and the rest of the Focus on Africa team, thank you for your company.